What if I told you that the most important lesson I ever learned about leadership didn't come from a book or a classroom or even a boardroom? What if I told you that it came from something that most people dismiss entirely? The most important lessons I've ever learned about leadership, I learned from astrology. Looking back, I suppose that's not too surprising. I've always seen things a little bit differently. As a kid, I wasn't the one racing to the playground or asking to stay out late. My passion was school. And I don't mean attending school, I mean playing school. Although playing may not be the right word, I took it very seriously. I had 2 classrooms, one in the basement and one in the backyard in our treehouse. Both were meticulously organized with chalkboards, whiteboards, grade books, textbooks, lesson planners. You get the idea. While other kids got toys or games for their birthdays, my favorite gift was an overhead projector. I'd spend hours projecting images and maps onto the wall, teaching my imaginary students about geography and world cultures. I knew from a very early age that I was meant to be a teacher. And yet, even though I felt in my element teaching, it's very difficult to make friends when you're the one controlling recess with a timer. And that feeling of not fitting in, like I didn't belong, was with me throughout my entire childhood. It was a surprise to probably no one that I became a teacher, and after graduating, I got a job as a high school business teacher. At first, I loved it. It was a dream come true. My colleagues would say to me, "Well, you're really good at this," and little did they know that I had been practicing for quite literally my entire life. But in my second year, things got dark for me. My ideas that were once praised were now met with a lot of criticism, and we got a new principal, and I watched the culture of the school change from one of collaboration and creativity to one of fear and control. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of constant stress, and I was singled out in ways that felt very intentional. Frankly, it was harassment, thinly veiled as leadership. And with each rejection, I was brought back to my past, standing alone in the backyard, wishing that somebody wanted to play school with me as much as I did. But I knew that this was more than just a bad workplace. I knew that if I wanted to do something about this, I was going to have to leave the classroom. And so I applied for my PhD in leadership studies, and I got in. And the choice to leave the classroom was one of the most difficult of my life because it meant leaving behind a lifelong dream and stepping into the unknown. But I knew that I had to do it. What followed? In a matter of 2 weeks, my entire life changed. I left a job for another job. I left an apartment for one across the country in California that I never saw. Left a master's program, left a PhD, left a relationship, left my family, left my friends, and I left the church. My entire life had completely changed overnight, practically. And to be honest, I was not doing well. And that's when my sister said something to me that I never expected. She suggested, "Why don't you get an astrology reading?" Astrology, really? Now, I was no stranger to the tarot or psychics, and I had looked at my birth chart online before, but astrology was a little out there for me. But I was pretty desperate, and I wanted clarity, so I booked the appointment. And the experience of my first astrology reading changed my life forever, because for the first time ever, I felt truly seen for who I was. Not as a teacher or a son, but as a soul in a body with a mission and a purpose. I felt like for the first time I belonged. And as the astrologer continued the reading, she was saying all kinds of things about me that I had felt before but never had words for. And so I asked her, I said, "Do you teach?" She said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Great, will you teach me?" She said, "No." I'm scratching my head. She said, "You don't need me to be your teacher. You are your own teacher. And in a few years' time, you'll be doing this better than me." I thought, lady, I'm 6 figures into a PhD program. I'm not doing astrology. But she was right. After that moment, something unlocked inside of me, and I started to study astrology. Well, not exactly study. It was more of a remembering. It's the only way that I can describe it. It felt as if I was unlocking ancient wisdom that my soul had always known. And I started doing readings for friends and family, and they'd say to me, like, how are you doing this? And to be honest, I had no idea what to tell them. I just knew that the symbols came alive in my mind and they meant something to me. My birth chart, little did I know, was actually a plan for my life's purpose. And I remember learning about my North and South Node for the first time. My South Node in my 10th house in Cancer, pointing to how I had been living my life up to that point, constantly striving, doing, overextending myself, earning degrees. And it was a story of striving but never quite feeling whole. But my North Node in the 4th house in Capricorn pointed to something radically different. It showed me that I was really here to build a foundation within myself. And from that place, learn to lead. What I learned from astrology was that the nature of my being was so important. But as I studied the predominant theories of leadership, I realized that we were not talking about being in leadership. In fact, the more I studied leadership, the more disillusioned I became because so many of the theories that I was studying were really drenched in outdated management practices of control and manipulation and power. It was as if leadership had been reduced to a game of chess with people as pawns to be moved, used, and sacrificed for the sake of outcomes. Show of hands, how many of you ever felt this way at work? Yeah. But astrology taught me something radically different. It showed me that when we connect with our soul, our purpose, we can actually lead in a way that we were designed to. And really, I started to ask a few different questions. What if leadership wasn't about control or manipulation? What if it wasn't about power and strategy? What if leadership could teach us something deeper about the nature of our being? And for that matter, what about astrology? It's been used for thousands of years by leaders, but what can it teach us today about leadership? These questions eventually led me to writing my doctoral dissertation on the use of astrology as a tool for self-discovery. Surprise. I never expected that would be the case. And what I learned was that leadership really wasn't about control and manipulation. It was about people. It was about the essence, the soul of people. And this is when I started to consider a different definition of leadership. This is my definition of leadership. Leadership is an act of creating space for people to be. This definition is the foundation for what I call being-centered leadership. Being-centered leadership isn't about control and manipulation, and it's not about doing more or achieving more. It's about connecting with our essence, our soul, and leading from a place that allows others to do the same. It's about honoring people for who they truly are, not for what they do, but for who they be. Over the past 5 years, I've worked as a spiritual coach and an astrologer and a business consultant, supporting people in living and leading from their soul's purpose. Because astrology hasn't just helped me, it's helped influence the lives of my clients who have come to understand their leadership style, their purpose, and how they show up to their teams. And as I've started to connect with this idea of being, this mindset has helped me to build my business, travel the world, teach about conscious leadership on my podcast, and most importantly, it's helped me to make decisions that are in alignment with my soul's purpose. But here's the thing. Being-centered leadership isn't about tactics or strategy, and it's not just an idea. It requires that we connect with specific capacities within ourselves. I call these the 7 capacities of being-centered leadership. These are a roadmap for living in alignment with our soul's purpose. And while I don't have time today to share all 7 with you, I will share the first, which is presence. Presence is the foundation of being-centered leadership. It's about being fully here, fully now, in this moment, without judgment or concern or wanting to fix or change anything. And in a world where we're constantly inundated by messages and social media, presence is rare, and yet it is one of the most important tools that we have as leaders. And it begins by turning our attention inward. So I'd like to invite you to experience this with me now. So go ahead and adjust your posture. And if your feet, you can place them flat on the floor. If you want to place your hands in your laps, and if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. And just taking a moment to connect with your breath. Maybe this is the first time today that you've noticed your breath. Maybe it isn't. And you don't have to change it, just notice it. Noticing the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Noticing the sensation of air on your nostrils. For just this moment, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to be, just here and now. I invite you to draw your attention to one final breath, a complete inhale and exhale. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back to this space. Welcome back. I'd like to remind us all of something that we very often forget, that we are human beings, not human doings. Yet, so many of us live our lives as if our worth is connected to what we produce or check off of some to-do list. And in such, we disconnect ourselves from our true self. And it's not really our fault, it's the model that we've been given. And the truth is, we all have moments where we feel unseen or where we question our value. But in reclaiming our sense of belonging to the cosmos, to each other, and to ourselves is the key to transforming leadership and the world. So, the next time you find yourself caught in a cycle of doing, take a moment to pause, reconnect with your breath, and remember, you're not here to simply do. You're here to be you. And true leadership is about creating space for that. Space for being. Thank you.